Hey y'all, welcome to my channel Reviewed, where we talk about all things television and film from today and yesteryear. So today I wanted to come on here and talk about the season finale of Interview with a Vampire from season 2, episode 8. The name of the episode is And That's the End of It. There's Nothing Else. And it absolutely was the end of something. So the episode starts off with Louis, Daniel, and Armand talking. Louis is basically telling Daniel all the things that transpired after Claudia's demise. Louis is saying to Daniel, he's like, he knew Claudia was gone. He said he could no longer feel his hands. He could no longer feel her. And he said he was just basically describing how her death affected him. And he didn't care at that point. He didn't care what happened to him. And he also started saying, he started having thoughts of what ifs. Like, what if he had never falling for Lestat? And then we started getting all these flashbacks of, we got a flashback of his mom, his brother, and his sister. The one consistent thing that he kept repeating, even though he was thinking about his family and thinking about what if I had never got turned by Lestat, was Claudia is gone, Claudia is gone, Claudia is gone. That was the one thing that rang true to him in that moment when he was locked away in that wall under those rocks, is that Claudia was no longer alive. So, Daniel ends up asking Armand, he was like, well, what happened to you when everything was over? And Armand was like, well, I got demoted. So basically, he made it seem like he was their do boy. And he was like, nobody really paid attention to him anymore at that point. So he just basically stayed in the background. But later on, we find out that that was not necessarily the case. So Armand, he slices open his arm and he drops his blood into the box of rocks where Louis is laying. And so we see Louis being revitalized, and he comes to, he starts to eat the rocks where the blood has dripped on it because, of course, he has to feed. And he basically was starving to death. And Armand mentions to him that he was screaming. And he was like, Louis was like, I don't remember screaming. And he was like, that's usually what happens when a vampire is getting ready to die. They start to scream. So as Louis gets his strength up, he basically is on a mission to find the coven. He's like, what y'all did to Claudia is not gonna fly with me, and what y'all tried to do to me is not gonna fly with me. Somebody gotta go, and it ain't gonna be me. He was like, it's 13 of them that wanted me, but if I gotta go down fighting, that's what I'm going to do. And that's exactly what he did. So Louis ends up in the graveyard and he sees the groundskeeper in the work shed area. So Louis goes into the work shed and he snatches the man up. So he ends up going into this crypt where he basically starts planning everything out. He was drawing his behind off on that ground. Do you understand? He started speaking in Creole. He was planning everything out. He was not about to leave any stone left unturned because at this point, he wanted revenge. So here we have Louis still trying to strategize. He started drawing things on the wall. He's walking around with these tools. He's even having conversations with the groundskeeper that he unalived earlier. And as you can see, his body count started to pile up because he did have to feed. So Louis is still plotting and planning. He's talking to the groundskeeper. He's like, yeah, I'm gonna have to use your truck. And the groundskeeper is like, yeah, duh. I have no need for it now. I'm no longer alive because of you. Thanks very much. But anyway, while Louis is talking to the groundskeeper, he starts hearing Armand's voice. And Armand is basically telling Louis to get out of Dodge. He was like, you need to go ahead and just leave. They're gonna find out what I did. Don't worry about me. And Louis was like, I don't give a F about you. I'm not worried about you. Leave me alone. Like, don't be trying to deter me from doing what I need to do. So Louis goes and gets the gasoline that he needs to carry out his plan, and he starts dipping these cloths into the gasoline. And while he's doing this, he hears Armand's voice. Armand is like, Louis, I'm sorry. I don't expect your forgiveness. If you could just understand why I did what I did. And Louis is like, shh. Like, did you save me at the trial? And Armand was like, yes. He was like, did you pull me out the vault and save me? He was like, yeah, but I couldn't save Claudia. He was like, just shut up, basically telling him, all right, it is what it is. So Daniel asked Armand, he was like, did you know that Louis was going to burn down the theater? And Armand was like, no. He was like, but I just had a feeling something was going to happen. And so Daniel says to Louis, he's like, you gave him a heads up. Why would you do that? This is the person that lied to you. Basically, this is the person that got you in the situation that you in the first place. And Louis was like, yeah, it was just my rage and my anger. And sleep deprived or something to that effect that he says. And so Daniel says to Armand again, he was like, but that was your coven for centuries. You didn't have any feelings for them. And Armand was like, it was just complicated feelings. So while Daniel is asking these questions to Armand and Louis, he is getting some direct messages from Rashid. And so here we have Louis getting his Adele on by setting fire to the rain. When I tell you he was pouring that gasoline everywhere, honey, he was pouring that gasoline like milk on cereal. But you know what threw me? I was like, these vampires don't hear him in here pouring all this gasoline. They don't even smell it. Like, not that I wanted them to wake up or harm Louis or anything like that, but I'm like, don't they have like special hearing and special senses? But anyway, he's pouring the Vaseline. He sees this writing or whatever, this saying on a mirror, and he goes up to it and he spots Claudia's diaries and he starts to, pick them up and put them in his bag. While he's doing that, everything basically goes up in flames. And then some vampire gonna try to run down the stairs and sneak this Louis, but baby Louis turned around and handled him real quick. And as you can see, it was a disco inferno, as the tramps would say. And so Louis' portrait is burning, and he lit him up. He straight up lit it up. And of course, this is the outside of the theater up in flames. And so you have two of the ladies who were able to escape the theater fire, and they're trying to figure out who did this to them. They have no clue that it's Louis. They have to talk about, oh, it's so and so and so and so. She mad at you because you stole Santiago from me. But what they do not know is the motorbikes that they riding on, Louis done rigged them, baby, and boom, they explode, as you can see. And honey, here we got Santiago trying to figure out what the goings on is. He goes down there and see that empty box and start picking them rocks up and realize that Louis ain't in there. He don't know what to do. So here we have Louis communicating with Santiago, aka Francis. When he called him Francis, he was like, Francis is your real name. You was running from your past. Santiago was livid. And so here we have a little banter between Louis and Santiago. Louis was taunting the heck out of Santiago, aka Francis, on down to the point where he said your girlfriend was telling people how unmanly your man part was. I hollered. I was laughing so hard. But I'm telling you, Santiago, aka Francis, rebuttal, I was not feeling it at all. And so while Louis and Santiago, aka Francis, are going back and forth, he proceeds to tell Louis, do you know what we did with Claudia's ashes? We used them as eyeshadow. And then he said something to the effect of him pleasuring himself with the ashes. I was like, oh, he gotta go. So Santiago goes through them tunnels and he ends up popping up out them sewer. And baby Louis was like off with his head. And that's exactly what happened. He was completely decapitated. And that was the end of Francis, aka Santiago. So here we get Rashid bringing in a martini and the newspaper that Daniel requested earlier. Okay. So here we have Louis and Armand talking, and this is after Louis basically takes out the coven. He asks Armand, he was like, so when did you start lying to me? And Armand says, when around the time you decided to turn Madeline. And, Armand is very apologetic, and he was like, I'll spend the rest of my life making this up to you. And Louis was like, you'll never be able to make it up to me. And our mom was like, I know. And so Louis was like, is Lestat still in town? And our mom was like, you won't be able to find. He said, that's not what I asked you. Is Lestat still in Paris? And our mom tells him yes. And so here we have Lestat de Liancourt. He is in this cave or whatnot, and he's basically thinking out loud. He's talking to himself. And Armand and Louis ends up walking in, and he looks up at Louis. And he was like, was it a good day's work? He was like, did it take a lot of energy out of you destroying everything in your path? And he looks at Armand and he was like, well, almost everything. And Louis looks at Lestat and he was like, you look small. So Louis starts walking around the cave, and Lestat was like, "Is there some distance between the lovers?" And of course, they're not responding. And Lestat was like, "I came down here to think of my origins and why I do the things that I do." And that's when Louis is like, "What? Like burn your daughter alive?" He was like, "You flew across the ocean to burn your daughter alive." So Louis is basically not letting up on the fact that, Claudia is no longer alive. And so Louis is still giving Lestat the business. He was like, "You came and rehearsed a play to burn your daughter alive." He is just not letting up. And Lestat was like, "I was following the rules." And Louis was like, "Whatever rules or law did you ever follow, Lestat?" And he tells him, "I'm here to kill you." And he erupts this flame in the palm of his hand, as well as Armand. And Lestat is looking at both of them like, girl, bye. So Lestat looked at Louis and Armand, and he was like, "I have the blood of Magnus in me." And Armand was like, "Magnus can burn." And he was like, "I have the blood of Akashai in me. And basically, I have to be willing in order for you all to take me out, which is not going to happen. Not today." So Louis kisses Armand in front of Lestat, and he was like, "This is your death." And Lestat was like, "Okay, Anne, like, let me know when it's over," because he really did not care. He had no feelings about it. He was like, "Okay, good luck with that, and thank you, next." So Daniel asked Louis, he was like, "What do you feel like Lestat meant by that? Basically, just blowing y'all off. Like, okay, it is what it is." And Louis was like, he didn't think our relationship would last. And here we are 77 years later. So here they go, smiling and grinning and reminiscing and kiki and cackling. And he basically, Louis tells Daniel, and that's the end of it. There's nothing else. So Daniel was like, "Oh, okay, end of session." Then he says, "I have a couple of follow up questions, if that's okay." He was like, "It's just basically the writer in me." So while he is asking these follow up questions to Louis, he takes out an envelope that was in the newspaper that Rashid brought him per his request. So Daniel starts to take the documents out of the package, and as you can see, it says, "Be careful, this is one of a kind." So as he's removing the documents, he's talking to Louis, he's asking him questions, and he's like, "So the fire," he was like, "4 vampires escaped." He named the 2 ladies, Santiago, and he said Sam. And keep in mind, Sam is also the vampire that was standing by Armand when the trial was going on, kind of like he was watching him or whatnot. And so Daniel asked Louis, he was like, "Was there ever any retaliation? Whatever happened to Sam?" And Lou was like, "No, time heals all wounds. All is forgiven." For what we hear, Sam is a DJ now. So Daniel's like, "Oh, okay." So he starts to ask Louis some more questions. And then he circles back to New Orleans, and he was like, "So remember the time Lestat brought those soldiers home and you told him to make them leave?" He was like, "How many soldiers did he mind to get them off your property?" And he was like, "Was it around like 15?" And Louis was like, "No, it was probably like 30." And Daniel was like, "30?" And he was like, "Yeah." So Daniel was like, "Huh?" And Louis was like, "Huh?" And he was like, "So do you think that more than one person was able to help you out during the trial?" And so after he says that, Louis and Armand is like looking at him like, "Okay, where's all this coming from?" And Daniel was like, "Did you think about that? That it could have possibly been someone else to help you out?" And Louis was like, "Nah. And baby, this is when the shoe drops and it kicks Armand in his ass. Okay. So Daniel proceeds to open up the documents, and it is the play from the trial. And as you can see, it says Santiago should hand the diary into the audience and have them fill the evidence. So Daniel starts to read all these things that were written in on the play. And Louis was like, "Where did you get that from?" And Daniel proceeds to let him know where he got it from. And our mom was like, "Oh, that can't be real." And Daniel was like, "Oh, it absolutely is real." And baby, at that point, it was murder, she wrote. Okay. So Daniels gives the documents of the play to Louis. And Daniel looks over at Armand. And when I tell you the look on Armand's face was priceless, Daniel was like, "Yeah, bitch, I got you. Listen." Oh my God. Louis started flipping through them pages. He saw that red ink. I'm sure he recognized Armand's handwriting. Oh my gosh, I was not ready for this. I again, I've never read the books. I have to say that. I've never read the books. I've only seen the movie. So this right here for me was a mouth drop moment, like complete mouth drop, seriously. So here we get a flashback of the play, the rehearsals. And as you can see, Armand is busy jotting down whatever he's writing down on the play, and Lestat is on stage practicing. Y'all, the props that they used for Claudia, Louis, and Madeline during rehearsal took me out. Oh my God, it was hilarious. So basically, to make a long story short, Daniel lets Louis know, hey, Armand did not witness the play, he directed the play. Listen, I was not ready for this. When last week when I said Armand eyes was bugging out of his head, I'm thinking this fool compelling the audience to say banishment, and he around here telling them death. It was Lestat who saved Louis. I was like, I did not see this coming at all. Like Armand, you one trifling fool. You chose violence and death. Like, did you really care for Louis at all? He wanted all of them gone. He wanted all of them gone because he knows as long as Lestat is around, he will never have Louis' full heart. Point blank. Period. He will not. Like, I was shocked. I was not expecting this. And when I tell you, Daniel was ready to spill this tea, he was ready to spill the tea. He never saw it for Armand, and now we know why. So after that ball is dropped, honey, Louis is livid. He ends up leaving the room. Armand stands up. He's like, Louis, Louis. He runs behind him. Daniel is like shaking his head, like, And then he gets a message from Rashid letting him know he needs to get up out of there and he needs to get up out of there quick. And of course, Daniel does not get out in time, and the whole place just does this huge house quake. Like everything just starts flying everywhere and shattering and breaking. And this is Daniel just sitting there in shock and disbelief at this point. So Daniel walks in the room. He sees Armand laying on the ground, Louis standing over him because Louis then slammed his butt into the doggone wall, which is what caused the house quake, basically. And so Louis is basically letting Armand know that it is over with them. And Armand is defeated at this point, as he should be. And Louis was like, I'm leaving town. When I get back, you and your stuff better be out of my house. He was like, as far as Daniel go, do not touch him. Do not lay one finger on him. If you do anything to him, it's over for you. And let me just say this, Armand, you are low down dirty. You are low down, dirty, gutter snipe, pretty bitch, straight up out the hood, and ain't nothing good gonna come to you. Like, you literally been playing in Louis' face for 77 years. You've been playing in this man's face for 77 years. You are basically not trustworthy. I don't even know if you are redeemable at this point. Like, no, dear, absolutely not. You played in Louis' face this whole time. Nebu, Nebu. Nebu, Nebu. Mm. So Louis basically he tells Daniel, I'm gonna send a car for you. Go ahead and clear out your room. I'm gonna send you back home, and he lets him know he's gonna wire him $10 million. So here we have Louis in the back of the car. He's back in New Orleans, riding over Lake Pontchartrain, and the driver is just talking, running his mouth about the Essence Fest and New Edition, and how his wife loved Ralph Tresvant. And he also lets Louis know that they're expecting some bad weather. So Louis gets to New Orleans. He checks into his hotel room, and then he ends up going on a local city tour. So as Louis is on this tour, the tour guide stops, and basically they're in front of Lestat's and Louis' old residence. And so the tour guide is telling this bogus story that has Louis quite tickled because it is so far from the truth. And let me say this, I love the tour guide's New Orleans accent. I'm assuming he is authentically from New Orleans, but the way that he was telling the story, it was hilarious. But anyway, so as Louis is listening to this, he sees this guy across the way. And this guy, he kind of runs across the street really fast, and he picks up rodents and he put it in a bag. And so that kind of just clicked in Louis' head that maybe he should follow the guy, and that's exactly what he does. He ends up following him. So the guy ends up going into this rundown shanty of a house. And of course, we see Lestat. So Louis walks into the house and the guy's like, "Who are you?" And Lestat's like, "Louis." And the guy's like, "Oh, you're Louis." And so Lestat tells the dude, he was like, "You need to leave." And the guy was like, "Well, where am I supposed to go? It's about to be a hurricane, blah, blah, blah." So Lestat throws fire at him and the guy ends up leaving the room. He and Louis greet each other and Lestat is like, "Are you just passing through?" And Louis said, "No, I came to see you." And Lestat was like, "Well, what does your companion think about that?" And Louis was like, "I'm my only companion right now." And I was like, okay, hashtag self love. So Louis asked Lestat, he said, "Did you save me in Paris?" And Lestat was like, "I gave you Armand. Tell me if that was me saving you." And Louis was like, "Why didn't you tell me?" And, he's just like, "Because I knew that you would figure it out." And he said, "Look at you, you're here, you figured it out. Yay, me." So Louis also asked him what made him come back to New Orleans. And Lestat was like, "New Orleans is my home. I am she is me." And then Louis just, he says to Lestat, he said, "I didn't realize that what you gave me was a gift." He said, I wore it like a curse." And he was like, "I was selfish and I felt like I was suffering and I wanted to impose that same suffering on you." And he was like, "Because of what you did for me, I have the life that I have and I want to thank you for it." And he just gets emotional. Oh Lord, y'all. When I tell y'all, this had me in my feelings so heavy because, you know, I just love them two together. And, Lestat basically says to him, he was like, "We could sit here and both just say all the awful things we said to one another. But, you know, Louis, in that moment, he just broke down and just told him, thank you." Okay, so they both get very emotional, and Lestat says to Louis, he was like, "September 8th, 1973." And he says it again. He's like, "September 8th, 1973." He's like, it was around 11 p.m. here, and it was around like 9 o'clock your time. And he said, "Armand called me." And he said, "Were you there?" And he got so emotional. Y'all, this scene had me very teary-eyed. Oh my gosh. Anyway, he was like, "Did you hurt yourself?" He asked Louis that, and Louis just lost it. He was like, "Yeah, I was in a bad way. I was in a bad headspace." And he said that he couldn't stop thinking about Claudia. And that brought me back to that episode when he went out on the rooftop and, he just let the sun basically, he was just going to let the sun burn him. And at that time, we did not know that that was pretty much how Claudia ended up dying. And so, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. He, he just basically says to Lestat that he can't get her out of his mind. And then Lestat basically, he breaks down and he was like, "I cannot stop thinking about her." He said that he cannot get Claudia out of his mind. He was like, Louis was like, "It's not all your fault." He was like, "I made you make her." He was like, "I pulled her out of that burning fire only to have her burned to death half a century later." And I was like, wow. And when Lestat was just basically letting Louis know how much he cannot get her out of his head, he says to Louis, he was like, "She looked at me before she, died." And he was like, "She looked at me like a child looking at a father." And he was like, "But I was never," and I guess he was going to say father. And then they end up hugging each other. And oh my gosh, that made me think about when I said last week, I was like, the look on Lestat's face when he saw Claudia burning, I did not know what that meant. I was like, was he happy about it? Was that satisfaction for him? Or was he indifferent? And now I know that he basically, I think he was just in shock. And that's just my opinion. Like, he did not know what to do because I think he probably couldn't believe that it was actually happening. But this moment right here for me, I was like, oh my gosh, I really hope they put these two back together because, oh man. But this was a very heavy moment, a very, very heavy moment, but necessary moment. So after that happens, we get a flash forward into Daniel, who book is ready, Interview with the Vampire. And as y'all can see, baby, the first thing I peeped besides this man Dimples, I had to put him on here because his Dimples is just too cute. Honey, was the nails. When Daniel put his hand up, I was like, oh, they done turned my boy. Daniel is officially a vampire. The nails. Look at the nails, y'all. Daniel's a vampire. So basically, he's talking about how he sold millions of copies of books. The guy that's interviewing him is like, was that a real vampire? Is this fiction? He was like, no, it's real. Whether people believe it or not, it's real. He was like, my sales are real. Like he's basically a millionaire because of that book. And hey, it's just become a very successful venture for him. So we get a view of this scenery because Louis is back in Dubai. And while they're showing this particular scene, you hear all these voices and people are saying, oh, he must be stopped. He went against his own. He needs to be burned. He needs to be punished. And these are other vampires that are talking about Louis. And of course, Louis can hear all these things because of his telepathic abilities. So as Daniel's wrapping up his interview, he goes outside and he starts talking telepathically to Louis. And Louis asks him, he was like, "Have you heard from your creator?" And Daniel was like, "No." And Louis was like, "I'm sorry, I never should have left you with him." But I guess at this point, Daniel don't care. He's selling millions of books. And he is basically thinking about working on a part two in reference to Interview with a Vampire. So once Louis is done talking to Daniel, he goes back into his house and he goes into that room and he puts his feet in those rocks and he sits down. And while he's doing this, he's still hearing all these vampires talk smack about him. So he basically sits down and he starts concentrating and listening to what they say. As you can see, Claudia's dress is back there hanging up on the wall. So as Louis is sitting in the room and listening to all these things that these vampires are saying about him, he silences them. He tells them basically to be quiet and he says, "I am the vampire Louis Duloc." Basically let them know where he lived, the penthouse he live in, let him know what type of tint is on his windows. And he was like, "If you want me, come get me." He said, "But just know that I run the night." And that's the end of the season two finale of Interview with a Vampire. I really enjoyed this episode. The whole Armand thing really made me feel away. I was not expecting that. I was not expecting that outcome at all. Again, I've never read the books. I really enjoyed this season. Per Hollywood Reporter, there will be a season three, and it's supposed to focus on Lestat and him dealing with the loss of Claudia and how it's going to affect him. So I am definitely looking forward to that. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to my channel, guys. Please let me know what you thought about this episode in the comments below. And I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.